Welcome back to another Hyperight Data Talks. Today I'm here with Steen Rasmussen, who is Director of Data Innovation and co-founder of IIH Nordic. Hello, Steen. Welcome.
Hi, Anna. Glad to see you. Glad to see you and glad to be here.
Thank you to you too for making the time. Steen is also going to be one of our speakers at the upcoming 10th edition of the Data Innovation Summit. So we're very happy to have him speak and share more insights there. And for today's discussion, Steen, I would like to start with asking you, can you briefly introduce yourself and share with us what do you currently do?
Yeah, well, I'm like I said, Steen Rasmussen, co-founder of IIH Nordic. We've been in the market for 20 years, and that kind of goes into my story as well. So if you do the same thing for 20 years, it's kind of the same story, and it's really a story about getting more value out of data. So when we started the company 20 years ago, the idea was saying that we felt there was so much data being gathered that wasn't necessarily being used for anything. Right, so we were like, okay, what's the return on this data, and how can you do more to get more out of that data? And that was actually kind of my entry into this world as on this level as well. I co-founded another agency before, but with very much a conversion rate optimization, crow focus. But before that, actually, I think the reason why I am who I am today is semi-based on my education. Originally, I studied corporate communications at the University of Roskilde in Denmark. So I come from a background that was about communications and business. So when I moved into the data space, that was kind of my challenge, right? I came into this data space, and the first job I got was as a usability specialist. And usability is amazing, but the job description in usability in old school Jakob Nielsen version of usability is that you're the ambassador for the users. And that's a super fine role, but if you start thinking about it commercially, then you're the ambassador for the users, but nobody's the ambassador for the business. So, and that was kind of what annoyed the hell out of me, honestly, right? Because I felt you had this uneven relationship. You would have somebody representing the users, but nobody was anchoring around the business. And that was kind of the idea that we had with IIH, saying that if you take this commercial approach and add it to all these online, saying, so what is the return on digital activity? So that was kind of the really early days of things. But it's basically my core triangulation, right? Business, users, and communication. And it has helped me a lot in relation to where I am today, because between these three points are the data, but the data in itself doesn't really have any value if you don't talk about the users, if you don't talk about the business, or if you don't talk about how it impacts communications. So that's kind of the core philosophy in relation to me, saying data in itself doesn't have any value unless you put it up against one of these three columns. So that's the core thing, right? And then from that, I actually moved on very much into a digital analytics space in relations to what data can we gather online in relations to understand what happens on the website, so we can reuse that back in relations to the users and especially the business. And you can say that in a lot in the beginning was kind of trying to understand the entire area, and I guess that's where I dived into the nerdy part of my life, because I was for a long time an extreme Google Analytics user, in the sense that we did courses in it, or did presentations on it. At one point, I even trained Googlers in using Google Analytics, which I thought is kind of must be the finest stamp of nerddom that you can get. That Google actually paid me to teach Googlers on using Google Analytics. So that was the full extent on the technical side. So what happened is today it's probably moved more from hands-on to the why. Today it's much more about why are we gathering this data? What is it that it's supposed to do? How can we look at the data and make sure that there's some level of business value in it? So it's been a lot of cases that we have over the years, I think. So but really going in and saying, so for instance, we did a project for Lego where we looked at saying in relation to the data they had and in relation to some stuff they were doing online, how could they use that data to better communicate and connect with the users, right? So it's kind of a series of workshops where we worked in and we consolidated all these ideas into like 7 very specific ideas that were small and fast to implement, and 3 bigger ideas that was more high scale or more complex. And from that perspective, it's really always been, and especially now, more and more about why the data. And it's also, so why gathering the data? And especially today where we have this much about the consolidation around GDPR and the limitations that is being put on data gathering, we need to be much better at understanding why we're gathering things and what we expect to get out of them, right? So in the bigger picture, for a long time, it's been like, with analytics, the one who gathered the most data, the one who has the most data when they die wins. But if you don't do anything with the data, it really isn't valuable. Then it's just a cost. The value comes when you do something with the data.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Steen. So my next question regarding this would be, in your session, you will speak about this very same topic and how to turn data into something that is valuable and actionable. So what do you want the audience to walk away from your session?
I think from my part, the first thing is seeing an alternative to the way we track and use data today. Over the last couple of years, we've been working a lot on this is thinking that that it's not about, the collecting the data is fine, but there's been this approach that the objective has been gathered. If we gather all the data, then we can make all decisions, right? So people have been tracking immensely, and it's been like the principle of data before decisions, right? So the focus has just been saying huge setups, bringing in data, consolidating data, because if you then one day have a question, you can go in and then the data can answer all your questions. The problem with that approach is that it turns into a big cost, because if you don't know what you're going to use the data for, then you have the problem that if you don't know what you're going to use the data for, then you have the problem that you will have to gather all the data. And I sometimes use the parallel saying, okay, so imagine that I'm building a kitchen for you, and you just tell me, Steen, I want to be able to make all food. So make sure I have room for all food and make sure that all the cupboards are filled with all types of ingredients so I can make any type of food I want. Now, the problem with that is that there will be a lot of ingredients going to waste. I will be spending a lot of time. Your kitchen will be way too big. You will have way too many ingredients in relation to the things that you're actually building or that you're actually cooking, right? And that's kind of the cost side we have today. So we have huge industry kitchens, and with very few people making omelets. And that's kind of the idea of flipping it and saying, okay, but if we know that you want to make omelets, then let's focus on you having enough eggs. And you don't need squash and bananas and almond milk and whatever if you just want to make an omelet. So it's kind of flipping it to saying, what is the purpose-driven data? And it's really kind of the big thing, right? So the other part of that is also going in and saying, okay, how can we push the data to be more focused on activation? So one thing is saying, back in the kitchen, saying, okay, how can I teach you to make more stuff? Instead of what you get today very often, analytics-wise, is your data is mainly an inventory of what you have in the cupboards. It's not really doing anything with it, right? So you get these huge reports about what's happening in so how much flour do you have and how much milk and how many peas and whatever, but it's not about doing anything. So the idea is actually taking it to the next level and saying, okay, cool, how can we help more people do interesting stuff with this. So teaching people to do stuff with the ingredients they have, in this case, the data.
Thank you for that. I would like to touch upon some challenges in your experience when working with data. What are some challenges when it comes to making data quote everything to everybody? How can organizations avoid these challenges? What are some solutions to this approach?
Perfectly enough, it goes back into my kitchen. Because in what we basically have in a lot of cases is that we talk a lot about data democratization, that everybody should have access to the data, right? So, and the problem with that, of course, is that it's like sending people into a kitchen where they have no idea what the ingredients are and ask them to cook something. So people who have never gone into a kitchen before, we send them into a kitchen where all the ingredients are. And most likely what will come out of that is a lot of mess. It won't necessarily be eatable by anybody. It might be, so if people have no idea what the ingredients are, then they'll don't know how to prepare it, they'll mess it up. And that's kind of the challenge with everything to everybody, because the data cannot be everything to everybody, because we have to align it and focus just on what has value for them. So that's kind of the core idea in relations to the challenges. It gives a lot of noise. There's way too many things available in relations to what they do. What we need to do to people is train them, saying, okay, you're a dessert chef. Okay, so the ingredients you need are in this cupboard or in these cupboards, and then that's what you need to have access to. These are the recipes that you need to learn first. And once you've learned them, then you can start experimenting around these recipes to see what else is going on, right? So instead of just giving access to everything, then specializing people in different type of data, because if the same people are going to be doing everything, then you won't get the full value out of it.
You touched upon the decision first approach earlier, and I want to ask you, what does this decision first approach to data mean in practice?
First approach is, before I let you into the kitchen, saying, I made this kitchen or this, and you tell me what is it that you want to do in the kitchen. So the decision first approach is basically saying, before I go shopping, I ask what you're trying to do. So before I buy anything, I focus on that. So technically, it's the reverse of the data first approach. So in the original story I told, we had this approach where we said we wanted to gather all the data so we can make all the decision. That gives a huge cost in maintenance. It gives a huge cost in keeping, just keeping things running. And we don't really see a clear outcome in relation to everything we're gathering. With the data first approach, I will go to you and say, okay, Jana, I can get you data, but I will get you the data that will help you make the decisions that you need to make in relation to your job. So what are the decisions that you are facing, right? What are the decisions that you need to make in your job? And for instance, in your job, it could be, well, Steen, I would really like to know who to interview next. And see how much traction there is on these people. So I will go in and prioritize. I can mix and match the people with a high reach with the people with a low reach, and I can kind of go and also reflect on what subjects should I ask them on. Okay, cool. Then I would get you that data. I wouldn't get you all the data about all the people at the same time. I would go and prioritize it around those things to make it easier for you to decide, okay, I need to talk to these people in this flow, because that will work best for me being able to deliver what I'm supposed to be delivering on. Does that make sense? So instead of just saying, here's all the data about everybody coming, you figure it out. Then saying, okay, what you want to do with this data? You want to interview people, you want to use this in relation to the marketing and help the chefs like me look good. So kind of have this reverse process to it. And for us, for instance, I think that one of the cases that people mention is at IIH we did in 2007, we transition to a 4-day work week. So everybody at IIH today work 4 days and 30 hours and still get a full salary. But for us, it was kind of we did a 3-year project in relation to being able to turn the organization around. But we knew from the beginning we were looking for things that would support this process. So we weren't gathering all the data. We were gathering all the data that could show that we wanted to be able to do the same work in 30 hours in 2018 that would take us 37 hours in 2014. Right? So we had we knew what data we were looking for. So that made it a lot easier saying the decision is this. We need to decide when we are ready to go to a 4-day work week. So when do we feel we have the data that supports that?
Yes, Steen, you couldn't have said it better. It's very easy to understand when you use a very simple example, like the kitchen. To sum up today's talk, I would like to ask you what are your thoughts on the next couple of years? What do you hope to see in the future when it comes to digital analytics, and what actually excites you the most? How do you think that data will shape the future of decision intelligence?
So for me, there's the one thing that is disrupting what we're doing right now and that will have a massive impact in relations to data analytics is, of course, like in a lot of other areas right now, it's AI. So we're seeing already in relation to AI how it's being integrated in relations to decision making. Now, there's a lot of issues around that because we cannot data analytics, especially online behavior analytics, traditionally doesn't have very strong data quality. So the issue is saying that for us to be able to tap into AI, we need to refocus on data quality and data governance to actually go in and make sure that the foundation of the data that the AI is going to use is there, right? So that is a really strong foundation in relation to being able to use the data. Because if the data is bad, well, then we know that then it's bad decisions, right? But the other part is kind of the one of the challenges that analytics and data in general has had is the entire change management aspect, that we need to see a bigger involvement of people in this, because for years we've been promising enabling people to make better and faster decisions with the data they have. And I think most people will feel that that is not necessarily what they have today compared to the promises that were made. And one of the big reasons why we haven't done that is we failed to integrate it into people's lives. So there's been implemented hundreds of tools with thousands of different KPIs in organizations. And still at the end of the day, it hasn't at the same level shifted the organizations, because there's been this expectation that the tools would be able to shift by themselves. And we kind of overlook people in the equation. So I see the technology moving forward. There is a return to people. So AIs still need supervision. There's this wonderful quote from IBM from the 70s, where they said an AI should not be able to make any decisions on its own because it cannot be held accountable. So we're still in early days in relations to letting AIs do stuff on its own. So we need somebody to be there and understand that and monitor and have the process in relation to that. And at the same time being aware, and this is kind of a wonderful note to end on, saying that I think for 2 years now I've seen this wonderful quote on LinkedIn where everybody says, well, you're not going to lose your job to an AI. You're going to lose your job to somebody using AI. Right? You heard that, I heard that, we heard that 1,000 times. The problem with it is that it's only partly true, because you and your 3 colleagues will lose their job to somebody using AI. So the AI will come in and take more jobs than just, it will not be one person using AI replacing one person. It will be one person using AI replacing multiple persons. So it's kind of going into that equation and finding yourself going forward and saying, what will my role be in relation to AI? And can I somehow take a role in that? And there's been this wonderful picture of organizations like a symphony orchestra where everybody plays their specific part and instrument and everything goes up on a higher level. And I see that as that might have been right in the old days, but now you're probably more somebody setting the pace in a jazz band, where these AIs and your tools and everything is something that can improvise around you. So it's carrying a tune and taking over and playing together. So it's not rigidly somebody playing a very specific part, because everything becomes much more adaptive. So you will have room to play a solo and your AI will have room to play a solo, but you will still be playing the same song together. That was a lot of metaphors in one interview, but I hope they still make sense.
Which makes the interview very interesting to hear. I think these questions we should all ask ourselves, everyone who works with data, which is you, me, myself, and all of my colleagues and your colleagues also. Thank you very much for this very engaging talk, Steen. I look forward to hearing more on this topic, on decision-first approach at the summit. And I invite everyone who is listening this interview to tune into Steen's session at the summit, and whoever is there, go reach out to Steen, approach him. I'm sure that a lot of interesting discussions will come up. And yes, thank you, Steen, for today, and see you at the summit.
Thank you. Yeah, looking forward to it.